All yours.
Hey, what's up, all you legends out there? Look, first of all, welcome back to Dad Bod's Dad Boss, the show where we talk about what do we talk about? We talk about the grind, we talk about the gains, and we talk about the chaos of balancing a family and a business. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Shane, and welcome back myself. Um, and this is how out of the loop I am. I normally have like a dedicated name for you, Mr. Bird. So if you give me 20 seconds, not even 20
Mate,
seconds.
just
So
go with
I've got
sparrow, mate. Go with a sparrow or magpie. We haven't done the magpie yet, the most common of all birds in New Zealand and Australia. Well, I don't know if it's the most common, but
nah. I've got a great one for you, Mr. Lilac-breasted roller.
lilac-breasted roller.
Yeah,
Sounds like that would be I reckon that'd be a cool job.
yeah. Take your shirt off and prove it, Mr.
Oh,
Lilac-breasted.
no, I meant for the ladies. If I was doing it with the ladies, not with the blokes, mate. That'd be weird.
Mate, and you've just come back from New Zealand yourself. How was the trip back home to celebrate your parents' anniversary?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it was just a short, sharp trip just for the weekend. So it was mum and dad's 50th, which was really cool. The cool thing about it was they had, well, I say they had their whole wedding party there, which was, and all of them from 50 years ago.
Wow.
Except, yeah, one of them couldn't make it in the end. She had flights booked and everything, but she was just really unwell. So we zoomed her in. But essentially, they had all of the wedding party, which was dad and all his groomsmen, mum and all her bridesmaids, and so that was pretty special, man. Pretty special to do that for 50 years in marriage, which is becoming less and less common nowadays. But then to have a whole wedding party 50 years later for two reasons. I mean, quite often we all lose people, loved ones through different illnesses and stuff. So for them to all stay healthy, but also for them to have stayed in touch as well, because I know that a lot of guys, or I say a lot of guys, but a lot of people, they don't stay in touch with their wedding parties over the years. They lose touch, or they grow, or they don't grow, or they just drift apart, or move to different parts of the world. So I thought it was really cool that 50 years, mum and dad were still married, but 50 years later they still had the friendships, and that they still had the everyone was still able to attend or come and attend the evening of celebrations.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. And I'm sure that your parents had put in the effort to maintain those relationships, right?
Yeah,
Because like everything, you get what you put in, right? And it's funny you mentioned that as well, because on the weekends, we had our fantasy football, you know, dinner where all of my mates from high school, and a few extras, we caught up to have our end of season celebration, um, and we started this 25 years ago, right? And we still do it because we put in the effort to stay connected. And yes, it's under the guise of you know um, fantasy football. We talk smack, we have a bit of banter, but it's just an avenue for us to continue to stay connected. Which then then we have other catch ups and all that kind of stuff. But that's our tool to remain in each other's world. And I'm sure your parents did the same. Would have been did you do the whole go through the photo album kind of thing?
yeah, yeah. Had the photos out. Had a put a bit of a slideshow up on the TV of some old photos of us kids and stuff like that. So which obviously had them in it. So yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
cool. And yeah, no, it was just good just to sit around and hear the stories of, the aunties and the uncles and everyone else that was in the bridal party about how mum and dad met and how they met mum and dad and what life was like for them 50 years ago, which was similar to us not too long ago.
Unreal. So, mate, good to see that you've landed back safely in the country. You know, as you know, and a couple of my mates know, that we went on a road trip, right? And we went through Central Australia. Experienced the whole landscape, the environment kind of scenario. Learned more about Indigenous culture here in Australia, and on the weekend I was unaware of it because when you're traveling remotely, we didn't have the Starlink or anything like that. We decided to switch off from the world, and coming back last weekend, realized there was like a massive like protest in the city. Harbour Bridge got closed down and all that kind of stuff, and also noticed like people trying to like stand up for this cause, and reflected on our time in Central Australia. People were trying to stand up for other causes in there around Indigenous culture. Um, and as I was saying to you before, Shane, like, um, especially in the education place, there are a lot of people who try to, you know, I guess, so to speak, do the right thing, but don't really understand what they're fighting for, or don't really like don't really like want to go deeper, or just have the surface level of these protests and whatnot. And that's what we're going to talk about, because I found it really interesting, um, how people just either jumped on a bandwagon, or when you try to have a conversation with them, they couldn't really answer, and want to explore the psychological components around that, um, about why people might be supporting others, and supporting causes that they don't have a real understanding about. Um, is there something similar, like, um, back home, regarding either Indigenous culture or not, or like, these causes that people seem to be jumping on board with?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's the same back at home. We have our own with the native people, as
Yeah.
they call them here, or as they call them in America, or other parts of the world as well. So there's the same. It's the same thing, that there's a lot of exposure around them, standing up for each other, or standing up for the things that they believe in and stuff. So yeah, back home we definitely have the same. Very similar to what you guys have here with the Aboriginals.
Yeah, yeah, and then the thing that kind of like caught my attention was, there's a war going halfway across the world, between Israel, Palestine, and other organizations and whatnot. And there was a pro Palestine march on the bridge. Um, but if you and I saw little snips of interviews and social media and the news and that kind of stuff. And when people were questioned, they weren't really able to answer on that, like, deeper level, if you get what I mean, Shane.
Yeah.
From your understanding of, like, um, behavioral sciences, and mindset, and I guess mob mentality, why do people kind of like easily conform to a side or a cause, even though they don't know anything about it?
It's the Forrest Gump effect, mate.
Forrest
Like, you
Gump
think about
effect.
Forrest Gump, when he came back, was it when he came back from the war? He ended up in that rally and he ended up speaking on stage and all that stuff
Yeah,
because he just got caught up in the moment. So,
yeah.
and people are the same. They potentially just get caught up in the moment, or they get caught up in the idea of something. Like, someone just says something, oh yeah, I can jump on board with that, but then they don't do the research. They don't do they, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but quite often a lot of them, they don't do the research. They just go, oh yeah, I'll come and hold a flag or hold a sign, or just be part of the tribe, which I think is really the deeper thing behind it, is they
Mm,
actually just want to be part of something. So they go, oh yeah, here's a group of people putting up their hand to talk about something, to be a part of something, and oh, I feel like I want to be part of something, because we all have a desire to be part of a community, part of a tribe. So they just jump on board, and then, like you say, if you get a camera put in front of you and you haven't done the research, and you haven't got the knowledge of the ins and outs, and what works and what doesn't work, and what's been done and what hasn't been done, then you can actually start to look pretty silly pretty fast. So it's if you're going to stand up for something, it's probably a really good idea to understand what you're standing up for, and how you got to where, or how that situation got to where it's at right now, and then at least you can congruently say you're standing up for it, rather than just doing it for your own, probably your own ego, just to say you're a part of something.
yeah, 100%. And I think part of that as well is, just to elaborate on what you shared there, mate. Um, Identity, as we know, is an important factor, right? And so then, when you become a part of a cause or whatever it is, your identity becomes attached to that as well. So,
Yep.
even though maybe later on they do understand a bit more, or they do their due diligence, and perhaps might question themselves, once their identity is attached, they'll then just start to justify, you know, why that is the right cause, why that is, identity, and we all fight. I don't think I've heard this from you. Like, we fight tooth and nail to preserve our identity, because it's important to who we are.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, can you just kind of like explain identity a bit more? Because people just think identity as in, like, here's my driver's license, but it goes beyond that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So your identity. Oh, how long have we got?
Yeah.
But in a higher level overview is how we view ourselves and who we believe we are. So, and then people will go beyond all measures to protect who they are or to stand up for who they believe they are.
Yeah.
So, what we've got to recognize is we've got to recognize, well, how do I view myself and what are my beliefs? And then what am I doing on the daily in order to reinforce that? Because quite often, if we link it back to what we're talking about, is we could jump into a protest about something and it might not even align with who I am or the belief systems that I have. But now, because I'm part of a community, the pressure comes in, it's the community influence. Oh, I'm just going to stand there and chant whatever because I'm part of that community. And then I don't, because I don't want to stand out. Because then if I stand out, I'm an outcast. And if I'm the outcast in the middle of the Harbour Bridge, and I start going, oh, this is not right, or I start saying something against what they are, then potentially I'm trapped in the middle of the Harbour Bridge, and I don't want to get thrown off the bridge, right? So, it's about your identity is who you believe you are and the beliefs that you have, but then also being able to stand up for that in all situations. And that's where it really comes down to. If you're going to stand up for something else, make sure that aligns with your identity. Because if it doesn't align with your identity, you're going to have a conflict sooner or later, and you can either try and find a way to get out of it, or you will adjust your identity to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's mate, you hit the nail on the head there. And so as dads, right? Our instinct is to protect our kids, right? And sometimes, we want them to be independent thinkers. We want them to like be aware of what's happening in the world, but we also want to make them. We also don't want them to get caught up in moments like this, and know when it's okay, like know that it's okay to have different ideas and thoughts, right? um Classic example. So we've been on our road trip, we come back, we had like parent teacher interviews with both our kids teachers. And look, proud dad moment. We were talking to Leo, his teacher, and she was saying that he is independent. He like, and he confided to the teacher and to us that there's a group of boys and they're all clever kids, but they just say silly things to get on with each other, right? To follow the cohort. And Leo's not like that. He to him, he can't wrap his head around why you would say something just even though it's not true, just to be like others. He will happily say, what's on his mind, at any point in time, right? Even if it goes against the grain. How can we, as parents, as dads, um, start to instill that, that sense of strong independence or strong self-identity within our kids, especially like Ezra's too, man. Like
Yeah.
we want him to be himself.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that came up is probably asking questions. Is like bring up a topic, bring up a subject, and go, "What do you think about this?" And then get them to explain what they think about it. Get them to explain how they've come to think about it. Because what you're doing is you're teaching them how to think, or how to creatively think about what they have an opinion about, or to be aware of what they think about the opinion that they have. So I would say, yeah, just ask questions and have conversations around all different range of topics. Like you guys could easily sit down with Leo and say, hey, look, did you see this? And, or, both the boys obviously, but did you see this? What do you think about these people standing on the bridge and protesting, and what do you know about it? And then spark a conversation and get them to have their own opinion and just support them. Like we're not going to obviously stand there and contradict them or
Yep.
fight them on it. Just go, oh, okay, cool, that's interesting. Yeah. Hey, did you think about this? Or had you heard about this? Or did you look into that? And then get them to learn how to do their own research would be super helpful.
Yeah, most definitely, mate. And mate, I love what you shared there. Like, get them to share their thoughts. And one thing that we've also done with both our boys is, we want to, like, what am I trying to say, Shane? I don't know. It's like parent instinct to just praise your kid, right? Like when they do something wrong, you just want to praise them. Like you want to make a big fuss out of it because like they've done something great. But we also know that if you keep doing that, they're going to keep seeking that external validation, right?
Yeah.
So one thing Carly and I have been definitely conscious about is before we actually like tell them, hey man, that was totally awesome. Like we ask them, how do they feel about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
How do you think they went? what did you do to, like, to achieve this? Because again, Kai's, he doesn't get it from me, right? But he's a brainy kid, it's 100% Carly. And he got some letters home from the school saying academically he's thriving, blah blah blah. And proud moment, like he stuck those notes on the fridge himself, right? But before we actually, like, man, awesome work, I said, mate, how do you feel about receiving those rewards? Those letters from your principal. You know, um, what did you do to do that, to get those letters? Um, you know, how do you feel about the effort that you put in? And try to join the dots. But more importantly, just want him to validate himself for the effort he put in, right? And then he's like, yeah. And he's probably a bit like me in terms of like expressing emotions. Yeah, I'm happy with myself, right? And then we made a
Yeah.
big deal out of it after he shared what he how he felt for his own efforts and for his own work, right? um with and in saying that there, right, we're always going to be there's always going to be different agendas, right, driven by different people. And how do we kind of like, what am I trying to say, Shane? How do we help them make sense of what's happening in the world?
Are we talking about the kids or the people that are out there making their, putting their voices out there? I'll say this. I actually, Eckhart Tolle, I heard this on an Eckhart Tolle book, or read it in an Eckhart
Mm,
Tolle book, right? And he talks about the people that normally fight for animal rights. So, because we talked about like, why do people go and protest, is probably because they just got caught, a lot of them, they got caught up in it. So now they just feel like they're part of the herd, right? But then if you think about the people that organize the protest, why do they protest? And Eckhart Tolle talks about this in one of his books, and he talks about, quite often, it's for people that they feel a desire or a need to stand up and fight for something because no one fought for them when they were young.
mm,
So now they're like, oh, I'm going to fight for the animals. And he just uses the animal rights people as an example, right? And then quite often, so you have a few organisers that they do a bit of research, they get into the knowledge and behind, and then they get a band of merry men behind them to try and support it, which is where you get the people standing at the gate that don't really know what they're talking about. So when we think about like why do people do it? For some people, the cause of the protest as such, or the cause of the rally, or the cause of
mm.
the argument, I guess you could say, is because of their own hidden agendas. That they have a deep desire to fight for someone because nobody fought for them when they were young.
Mate, I wrote that down. Hidden agendas, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And then when you've got two groups protesting, they're protesting on the thing, but they're not actually dealing with the real thing, which is why do the head people, the leaders, why do they have this deep desire, and how can we talk to them in a way that then helps? Well, for some of them, it helps them what though? Like,
yeah,
for what purpose do you even want to go into some of those conversations? But it's really
yeah,
about understanding that you're probably never going to change their opinion
yeah,
because they have a really deep ingrained desire to fight for something. And if they stop fighting for animal rights, then they'll go and fight for the war, or they'll go and fight
yeah.
for something else. They'll have a COVID argument or something like, oh, I just said it on, oh no, it's live.
I know
I just said
we've
that.
been blacklisted, mate. Well, what have
Well,
you done? What have you done to us?
the internet's shutting down, mate. But you know what I mean, right? If it's not one thing, they'll go and fight for
Yeah,
something else, and they
yeah,
will go and do whatever they can to have an opinion against it, to fight for something.
yeah, yeah. So, what Shane's saying there, guys, is just resolve your mummy and daddy issues and you won't have to protest.
Exactly. Could have gone to the footy instead and supported the footy.
I love that. So, like then, like, yes, we've kind of like, there are some things that we definitely are worth you know sharing an opinion about, or standing up for. So and one of my kind of like, in a previous life, I used to be an educator, I used to be a teacher, right? And the thing that I used the conscious decision I made was to work in public education schools because those and fight for, and sorry, work in public education schools, but make a concerted effort to work in those schools that are in low socioeconomic areas, right? Because I understand the value, I understand the impact that a teacher can have on students in those areas, because like I live a great life now because of the teachers who, took the time and effort to educate me when I first started school, right? Um, how can we make sure that the causes that we choose to, right, that we choose to represent are like worthwhile?
That's a great question too, isn't it?
Mate, that's no, like I don't blame you. You've had like Eric questioning you for the last couple of weeks,
I felt interrogated, mate. The big German, he was like, "Tell me the truth."
Tell me now.
How do we make sure? I think the first thing is it probably comes back to that sense of identity. Like, does my support for this association or this community or this thing, does that support my identity and who I am? And then we can go into the conversation around values as well, because there's identity, there's values and stuff like that as well. So does it support who I am? Because the other thing too that I actually heard Tony Robbins say was people will do whatever they can to meet the expectations of their peer group. Because he talked about, like, he went and spoke to the Marines, and like obviously when I was in the army, I was a lot fitter when I was in the army than I am now, because of the expectations of my peer group. So I changed my values once I left the army because I didn't have the expectations of my peer group. So if you go into a community, if you go in and you're standing on the harbour bridge and you stand there long enough with those people, you will change who you are and you will change your values to meet the expectations of your peer group. So in answer to your question is, whatever you're going to fight for or whatever you're going to stand for is probably a better word for it. Whatever you're going to stand for, make sure it's in alignment with who you are, but also your values and what you want long term in your life.
Yeah, alignment. Like we talk about that word a lot, right? It's got to be aligned with who you are, your values, your behavior expectations. Because once everything lines up, as you know, it just life just feels a bit easier, right? Rather than scratching and fighting against your values or having that internal conflict, that internal monologue, doubting yourself over and over again, right? With like, for example, Mister. So say like you're on a rugby team, right? You're on a rugby team. Um, like they're like, what am I trying to say? They're all like, yay, beef, steak, that's the best, right? Rah, 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 rah. Let's go get a T-bone, let's go get some whatever it is, right? And then you're there, you're going, okay, I hear that, but I'm a chicken breast guy, right? and, and sometimes we can't change our environment, right? Um, uh, what can people do, or what would you do in that scenario? Like, if you know that this is what I stand for, but that's my peer group, there's a dilemma. What do I do?
Yep. Well, you eat the chicken and you don't
Yeah.
justify it, but you don't justify it. You don't have to. I don't have
Mm.
to justify that I'm a chicken eater versus a beef eater at the pub
Yeah.
after rugby. If
Yep.
someone goes, "Oh, Bertie, what are you doing eating chicken?" You go, "Yep,"
Yep.
because then there's no conflict. It's not like, if as soon as I try and justify it, then they try and come back. It's like tit for tat. Like, you can't have an argument, or you can't have a conflict, or you can't have a disagreement on your own. I mean, I've tried it many times. It just doesn't quite work. So just, but what it really comes down to is just standing true for what you believe in. If I believe in chicken breast is the way, and I'd rather chicken breast over the T-bone, which this is clearly made up conversation right now, because I'd rather have the T-bone. But if I did, if I would rather have the chicken breast over the T-bone, then I'm just going to order it and I'm going to eat it. And if somebody has an opinion, go, cool, thanks for your opinion.
Yeah, yeah, mate. And let's be honest, we all know that you're a chicken guy. Like, you're the guy who takes the chicken
Oh,
at the
no,
wedding.
I'm a breast guy, mate. I'm a breast guy.
I love it, love it. Now, let's be honest, let's be honest. Whenever we go, like, set menu somewhere, it's a wedding, I'm always getting the white meat. Charlie's getting this red meat. Let's. I'll put that out there, right? But like at your wedding, your chicken was on point.
Yeah, I'd like to say I cooked it, but no.
Oh, love it, love it. So, guys, like this is something that's happening in the world right now, but it's something that is always happening. And as kids continue to grow, and even as adults, we want to make sure that whatever we choose to kind of like align with, or whatever we choose to um, stand up for, or make sure that our values are showcased, that we want to make sure that it's reflective of who we are, right? And that we have the independence, right? And are confident enough to stand up for what we want, right? So, big conversation. Would have been bigger with Eric here, but he's off doing something that only Eric does. But guys, that's all from us this week. Dad bods, dad boss. Stay sharp, stay strong, and we'll see you next time.
As per always.
Always.